Welcome to the Facilitators Deep Dive Podcast, your podcast on your way to facilitation mastery. The fascinating world of reinventing organizations.
Okay.
It sounds like you're really interested in exploring alternatives to traditional management, especially those that prioritize things like
Right.
purpose, employee well-being,
Yeah,
and the ability to adapt in our constantly changing world,
absolutely.
and to help us navigate all of that.
Yes.
We have Frederic Laloux's Reinventing Organizations,
That's right. Or
rather the illustrated version.
the illustrated.
I love that we're working with the illustrated
Yes,
edition. I
I
feel
do.
like it's going to make
Yeah.
these sometimes dense concepts a little more digestible.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Even though we're dealing with some pretty complex theories about organizational structure,
Right.
I think the visuals in this version really help bring the ideas to life.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah.
So what really stood out to you when you were prepping for this deep dive?
Well, to be honest, I was just blown away by all the real-world examples that Laloux showcases. These aren't just hypothetical models,
Right.
but, actual companies
Yeah.
across various industries that are operating on these seemingly radical principles.
Yeah. And I have to say, when I saw that one of those companies was Bertsorg,
Oh, yeah.
a Dutch healthcare organization
Yeah.
with 9,000 employees and no bosses,
Yeah.
I was a little skeptical.
Yeah, how is that even possible?
How can a company that large function without someone at the top calling the shots?
Right. Well, I had the same thought initially.
Yeah.
But as we kind of go deeper into the book today, I think you'll find that these organizations aren't about chaos at all.
Okay.
It's more about finding new and innovative ways to distribute authority and to really tap into the collective intelligence of the whole organization.
Okay, so it's almost like, it
Yeah.
reminds me of how a forest works.
Yes.
There's not a CEO tree out there,
Right?
calling the shots for all the other trees.
Yeah, exactly.
They all kind of work together in this beautiful, complex ecosystem.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
And it really speaks to the core idea behind these Teal organizations,
Okay.
that they're much more like living organisms than well-oiled machines.
Yeah.
They're all about adaptability, evolution, and trusting in the inherent wisdom of the whole system.
So how does Laloux kind of explain the journey
Yeah.
that organizations have taken to get to this point?
Well,
I know he uses a color-coded system
yeah,
to illustrate different organizational models.
he does. Yeah.
Can you walk us through that a little bit,
Sure.
starting with
So he starts with red organizations.
red?
Yeah, which are really all about power
Okay.
and impulsiveness.
Oh.
So I think a good example would be like a wolf pack
Got it.
or even the mafia.
Okay, so red,
It's very much top-down authority,
power, impulsiveness.
immediate action,
Got it.
not a lot of stability there.
Okay, what comes after red?
So as things get more complex, we move to the amber stage.
Okay.
And so this is more like the military
Right.
or a very traditional large corporation.
Got it.
And amber organizations value things like stability,
Okay.
rigid hierarchies, very clear procedures for everything.
Right, so it's all about order and control.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've got red, we've got amber.
Yeah.
What's next?
Then we get to orange, where a lot of modern businesses find themselves.
Oh,
So think Wall Street, big tech companies.
got it.
That classic achievement-driven model. They really value innovation
Okay.
and reward merit.
Okay, but obviously we know that that comes with,
But as many of us know,
Yeah.
this drive for results can come with some pretty serious downsides.
like, burnout.
Yeah, exactly.
Just that constant feeling of,
Yeah.
like, pressure to perform.
The pressure.
Yeah.
Now, before we jump ahead, where do you think green organizations fit into this?
Well, based on what you said so far, I would say that green organizations are the ones that are trying to do things better,
Okay.
more ethically,
Yeah.
maybe with a greater focus on values and employee empowerment.
You nailed it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So these are often the ones that we hear about as being conscious companies,
The conscious companies.
the ones that are promoting
Right.
sustainability, work-life balance,
Absolutely.
that kind of thing.
But they still operate within many of the limitations of
Yeah.
those previous models.
So really what we're seeing is each of these models arose in response to
Yeah.
this increasing complexity.
Yeah.
But they each kind of reach a point where they're just no longer effective.
Yeah, they hit a wall.
And that's where Teal comes in.
Exactly.
Okay.
Laloux presents these Teal organizations as the next evolutionary leap in organizational design.
Okay.
And they really address the shortcomings of the previous stages by embracing self-management, wholeness, and evolutionary purpose.
Okay, let's unpack those 3 breakthroughs, starting with self-management.
Sure.
I have to admit, the idea of a company with 9,000 employees
Yeah.
and no bosses
Yeah.
is just, it's a little hard to wrap my head around.
I know, right? It's mind-blowing.
So how do self-managing teams handle the things that traditional managers typically would?
Yeah.
Like, how do they resolve conflicts? How do they deal with
That's a great question.
performance issues, things like that?
Yeah, and it's probably one of the first questions that comes to mind for anyone hearing about Teal organizations
Right.
for the first time.
Right.
But you know what? It might seem counterintuitive,
Uh-huh.
but the examples in the book, like
Yeah.
Bert Sorg,
Yeah.
show us that self-management isn't about everyone just doing whatever they want.
Okay.
It's about creating structures and mechanisms for distributing authority and for really tapping into the collective intelligence of the whole organization.
So I'm picturing like a flock of birds
Yes.
that's somehow able to navigate
All right.
really complex environments,
Uh-huh.
make really quick decisions.
Yep.
Without a single bird in charge.
That's a great way to visualize it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how does that translate into real world practices?
For example, Bert Sorg uses the advice process.
The advice process.
Yeah.
Can you explain how that works?
Absolutely.
Because that seems like something that could be really applicable even outside of even self-managed,
organization.
the Teal structure.
Yeah.
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 So instead of seeking approval from a manager,
Okay.
individuals are actually required to consult with colleagues who have the relevant expertise
Okay.
or who are going to be affected by that decision.
So it's really about tapping into the collective wisdom of the team
Yeah,
rather than relying on a single authority figure.
absolutely.
And it seems like that would lead to
Well, it does.
not only better decisions, but also a greater sense of ownership.
And accountability
Yeah.
among the team members.
And we see that playing out in Bert Sorg.
It's exactly.
They're not only seeing a significant increase in employee satisfaction,
It's right.
but also a dramatic improvement in patient care.
Patient outcomes are way up.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's Bert Sorg.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any other examples
There are.
of companies successfully using self-management in different industries?
Yeah. Another fascinating case is FAI, a French brass foundry.
Okay.
And they've completely ditched that traditional management hierarchy
Okay.
and organized their teams around specific clients.
So instead of having like an engineering department,
Instead of a
production departments,
They
they
could
have
share.
teams dedicated to
let's say,
Volvo.
or
Audi.
yeah.
So each team is responsible for the entire process, from
Okay.
design to delivery.
Wow. So there's no need for layers of management approval, bureaucracy.
They have the freedom
They've got the freedom
and the responsibility.
to deliver the best possible product.
Absolutely.
Wow. And how are they doing?
And the results speak for themselves.
Yeah.
FAVI has consistently outperformed its competitors in terms of both quality and profitability.
Okay. So this isn't just some
It's the real deal.
theoretical idea.
Yeah.
It's actually working in real companies
It is.
across different industries.
Yeah.
But I'm curious,
Yeah.
what about things like compensation?
That's a great question.
Like who decides?
Yeah.
Who gets a raise if there's no boss?
So let's take a look at Morningstar,
Morningstar.
a tomato processing company in California.
Okay.
They've developed a system where employees essentially determine their own salary increases.
Wait, so they just
Now, hold on.
decide how much?
It's not quite that simple.
Okay.
It's a bit more nuanced.
Okay.
Employees actually write a proposal
Huh.
outlining why they deserve a raise.
Okay.
And they take into account their contributions to the company and the company's overall performance.
Okay.
And then a peer panel
Peer panel.
provides feedback
Okay.
and makes recommendations.
So it's still a structured process.
Yeah.
But it's based on
It's based on
peer review and
of course.
transparency.
Exactly.
Rather than that traditional top-down
That top down.
evaluation.
Yeah.
Okay, so I can see how that would create
Well, it
a
does.
very different dynamic.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got a good grasp of self-management,
Yeah.
how it actually functions in the real world.
Mm-hmm.
But what about wholeness?
Wholeness.
What does that even mean in this context?
So think about how often you
Yeah.
or anyone really feels the need to wear like a professional mask at work.
I think we've all been there.
Right.
You're not showing up as your
You're not being your authentic self.
authentic self, yeah.
Yeah.
So Teal organizations are encouraging people to...
They're really trying to break down those barriers and encourage people to bring their whole selves to work. The vulnerability,
The good, the bad.
the quirks,
Yeah, the whole package.
the passions, the whole package.
That sounds fantastic in theory,
It does.
but a little scary to actually put into practice.
It's a little scary, but it's happening.
So how are companies actually doing this?
Well, you know, some companies are doing things as simple as
Okay.
allowing dogs in the office.
Wait, dogs at work?
Dogs at work, yeah.
Okay, I can get behind that.
It's becoming more and more popular.
But how does that
Why-
contribute to this idea of wholeness?
It's about creating a more relaxed
Okay.
and human-centered environment.
Okay.
It breaks down that formal, sterile atmosphere
Right.
that you often find in
Yeah.
traditional offices.
Yeah.
And it allows people to connect on a more genuine level.
Okay, I can see that.
Yeah.
What about companies that are dealing with,
Yeah, sure.
more complex or emotionally charged situations? Are there examples of organizations that are really creating
Absolutely.
a deeper sense of safety
Yeah.
for employees to be their full selves?
So one example that really stood out to me
Okay.
is RHD,
Appreciate.
a human services nonprofit in the United States.
Okay.
And they work with individuals who have often experienced incredibly challenging life circumstances.
Huh.
So the potential for conflict
Right.
and intense emotions
Yeah, that's going to be high.
is really high.
So how do they create that sense of safety?
What impressed me about RHD is they've gone beyond simply stating their values,
Okay.
like respect or open communication.
Uh-huh.
They've developed detailed ground rules
Okay.
that clearly define acceptable and unacceptable behavior.
So instead of just saying be respectful.
Right. They give very specific examples of
Yeah.
what constitutes demeaning speech or behavior.
Okay, so it's very clear
It's very clear.
what's okay and what's not okay.
And anyone who encounters that behavior is empowered to call it out,
Wow, so it creates,
which takes courage, but it creates a level of accountability
yeah.
and transparency.
Yeah, and it shows that,
That's crucial for fostering that genuine wholeness.
yeah, everyone's feelings matter.
It demonstrates that everyone's feelings and experiences matter.
Yeah,
And that they have the right to be treated with dignity and respect.
that's a powerful example.
I love
How-
creates
And it highlights how,
something that's seemingly so simple
yeah,
can have such a profound impact.
self-management and wholeness really go hand in hand
Yeah,
when you trust people to make responsible decisions
right.
and create that space for them to really show up authentically.
Yeah.
Amazing things can happen.
Okay, so we've covered self-management, wholeness.
Mhm.
That leaves us with evolutionary purpose.
Evolutionary purpose.
That one
This one.
sounds a little more abstract.
It does sound a bit abstract.
Can you help me wrap my head around that one?
Let's start by thinking about the typical corporate mission statement.
How often do those feel like just hollow words?
Yeah, I think we've all seen those mission statements that sound great.
More about marketing than actually guiding the company's actions.
On paper,
Right.
but they don't seem to reflect the
Sure,
reality
yeah.
of how the company operates.
Yeah, Teal organizations take a different approach.
Okay.
They see the organization as a living entity, almost like a living organism,
Okay.
with its own sense of purpose and
Okay.
direction
Got it.
that's constantly evolving.
So it's not about
Yes.
the CEO coming up with a grand plan
It's not about
and then forcing everyone to follow it.
that top-down, predict and control model.
Yeah.
It's more about listening to where the organization naturally wants to go,
Okay.
sensing its potential,
Okay.
and then supporting it in getting there.
So it's a very different way of thinking about
Yeah,
strategy
it is.
and leadership.
It's much more organic.
Yeah.
It's a sense and respond approach.
Okay, so can you give me an example of what that looks like in action?
Sure, let's revisit Bertzorg.
Okay.
Remember how they began incorporating accident prevention work into their services?
Yeah.
So that wasn't some top-down directive
Okay.
that emerged organically from a team of nurses
Okay.
who saw a need and just took the initiative to develop a solution.
So they were responding
They were responding
to a challenge.
to a very real challenge
Yeah.
they were facing in their day-to-day work.
So how did the organization respond to that?
So Justalep, the founder of Bertzorg,
Okay.
he encouraged them to share their approach
Uh-huh.
with other teams,
Oh, yeah.
allowing it to spread organically.
So it's about trusting that the best solutions often emerge from
Awesome.
the front lines.
Emerges from those front lines,
Yeah.
not from some executive suite
Right.
that's disconnected from the day-to-day realities of the work.
But that requires letting go of the illusion of control.
It does.
which can be pretty scary.
Yeah, especially
For a lot of us
for those of us
that are used to
yeah,
those more traditional models.
traditional models of management.
Yeah.
It's a huge shift. But the
It's good.
results,
Yeah.
the results speak for themselves.
And that seems to be the case
Yeah.
with all of these Teal
Mhm.
organizations, is that their ability to adapt
It is.
and respond to emerging needs.
That's really been a key factor in their success.
Okay, so this is all incredibly fascinating.
It is fascinating.
But I'm wondering,
yeah.
how does this play out in terms of like
Yeah.
strategy?
That's where things get really radical.
Okay.
You might be surprised to learn that many of the Teal organizations that Laloux studied
Huh?
don't even have formal strategic plans
Okay.
or traditional budgets.
Wait, no budgets.
No budgets!
How do they even function without a budget?
It's about embracing agility
Okay.
and responsiveness
Okay.
instead of trying to predict the future
Okay.
with all these rigid financial forecasts.
They trust that if they stay true to their purpose,
Okay.
they adapt to changing conditions, they keep their finger on the pulse of what's happening,
Yeah.
the resources will follow.
That's a level of trust I'm not sure I'm quite ready for,
It's a big leap of faith.
but I'm definitely intrigued.
Yeah. It's about questioning those models
Yeah.
that are trying to predict the unpredictable.
So we've explored these 3 breakthroughs
Yeah.
of Teal organizations,
Mhm.
self-management, wholeness, evolutionary purpose.
Mhm.
And it's all incredibly mind-blowing.
It really is.
But it also feels
But it also feels,
rather overwhelming.
where do we even begin?
Yeah, if a CEO or a leader is listening to this and thinking, this all sounds amazing,
Yeah.
but where do I even begin?
Right.
What advice would you give them?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And there's no easy answer or like a one-size-fits-all approach.
Right.
You know, it's not just about...
Flipping a switch and suddenly becoming a Teal organization,
Right.
it's much more about embarking on this journey
Okay.
of unlearning a lot of the deeply ingrained assumptions we have
Ah.
about how organizations should work.
So it's evolution, not revolution.
Precisely.
Okay.
And I think the first step is a really fundamental shift in mindset.
Okay.
Instead of seeing the organization as a machine,
Uh-huh.
that needs to be controlled.
Right.
We need to start seeing it as a living, breathing system,
Okay.
capable of self-organization and adaptation.
Like that forest we were talking about.
Exactly, like that forest.
Okay, so how do you actually
So
put that into practice?
one of the most effective approaches is to start small.
Okay.
You know, just identify an area within the organization where
yeah.
energy feels blocked
Okay.
or where existing practices just aren't working.
To pick a pain point.
Yeah, pick a pain
And
point.
start experimenting there.
Exactly.
Wow.
And don't be afraid to get creative. There's no one-size-fits-all blueprint for Teal.
Right.
What works for one organization
Yeah.
might not work for another.
So it's about adapting these principles,
It's about adapting
To your specific needs.
for your unique context, yeah.
not just blindly copying.
Not just blindly copying.
what someone else has done.
Yeah. And remember, it's a process.
Uh-huh.
You're going to make mistakes along the way.
Right.
That's part of the learning.
So it's really...
The key is to stay curious,
Yeah.
stay open to feedback,
Yeah.
and keep experimenting.
That feels much less daunting
Yeah.
than this, like,
It's not about
massive overhaul
pretty massive overhaul.
from the get-go.
It's about those small steps,
Yeah.
learning as you go.
You mentioned earlier that one of the key roles
Yeah.
of the CEO
Mm-hmm.
in a Teal organization is to hold the space.
Right.
What does that actually mean?
So it's about creating
Yeah.
a safe and supportive environment
Yeah.
for Teal practices to take root.
Okay.
It means resisting that temptation to fall back
Huh.
on old, familiar ways of doing things
Okay.
when you're faced with challenges,
Right.
when there's pushback.
So you really have to be a champion
You have to be a champion
for this new way of
for
working.
this new way of working, yeah.
Even when
Yeah,
there's
but-
resistance
So there will be pushback.
or uncertainty.
Change is always uncomfortable,
Yeah.
especially when you're challenging those deeply ingrained beliefs
Hmm.
about power and control.
Right.
So it's natural for people to get nervous
Right.
when those familiar structures
Yeah.
start to shift.
So the CEO needs to be
The CEO needs to be ready
prepared to...
to weather that storm
Yeah.
and just hold steady to the course.
Even when it gets rocky.
Even when it gets rocky.
And it's not just about the CEO, right?
It's not just about the CEO. It's about building that critical mass of people throughout the organization who understand and believe in these principles.
So it's about creating a movement.
It's about creating a movement.
Not just a top-down mandate.
Not just a top-down mandate.
Okay, speaking of creating a movement, Laloux talks a lot about storytelling.
Oh, yeah.
In Teal organizations.
Storytelling.
What role does storytelling play?
Well, think about that traditional performance review.
Okay.
Often a very cold, impersonal process.
Right.
Focused on metrics and goals.
Yeah.
Teal organizations are really trying to move away from that toward more human-centered practices that really tap into the power of storytelling.
So it's not just about
build connection.
Being nice.
It's not just about being nice.
It's
about really understanding what people value about the company culture and what they hope to see nurtured.
So it's a way of
in the future
transmitting the company's soul.
It's a way of transmitting the company's soul. Yeah.
Okay. Do you have a concrete example? I do. Yeah.
Of how storytelling is used.
So sounds true.
Sounds true.
The publishing company we mentioned earlier, when a new person joins the team, everyone shares a story about their wish for that newcomer's experience at the company.
So it's a way of welcoming...
It's a way of welcoming them.
New employees into the fold.
Into the fold,
and sharing the values and aspirations.
And really sharing those values and aspirations.
That shape the company culture.
That shape the company culture.
It's almost like a ritual.
It is like a ritual.
To pass on the company's DNA.
Yeah.
And how powerful is that?
It's incredibly powerful for building trust and connection.
Yeah.
Right from the very beginning.
You would never get that.
From a typical HR orientation.
From a typical HR orientation.
Okay, so we've seen storytelling in terms of onboarding. What about, are there other examples?
There are.
Of how Teal organizations are using storytelling? Yeah,
so one of the most striking examples comes from a school in Germany called ESBZ.
ESBZ.
And every Friday, they have a praise meeting.
A praise meeting.
That's entirely student-led.
What happens at a praise meeting?
So students take turns sharing stories. About their classmates. Highlighting acts of kindness. Moments of courage. Anything that they feel deserves recognition and appreciation.
That's so heartwarming.
It is, and it really
creates a culture of
gratitude. And encourages those students to look for the best in each other.
Yeah, and it's not just about
And it's not just about feel-good vibes.
Feel-good vibes.
Right, these stories really help those students understand what behaviors and values are celebrated.
Within the school community.
Within that school community.
Yeah.
And it inspires them to embody those ideals.
So it's like
in their own action.
Positive feedback loop.
It is, yeah. And it's something that can be applied to any organization, not just schools.
Right, imagine it.
Imagine starting a team meeting.
Yeah.
With everyone sharing a story about a colleague they appreciate.
Yeah.
Or a recent success they want to celebrate.
It's just a shift.
It shifts that energy.
The energy in a really positive way.
In a really positive way.
In a really positive way, yeah.
Okay, we've talked about storytelling.
Yeah.
What about meetings in general?
Meetings.
They can be such a...
Oh, they can be brutal.
Energy drain.
Yeah, yeah.
How do Teal organizations approach meetings differently?
Well, for one thing, they tend to have a lot fewer meetings.
Okay, I already like where this is going.
Right. Because decision-making is more distributed.
Yeah.
There's less need for those endless
committees
and approvals.
Yeah.
So when they do have meetings...
When they do, what makes them different?
They're really intentional about creating that space for wholeness and authentic connection. So, for example, FBI.
That French company we discussed earlier used to start every meeting by having everyone share a story about someone they had recently thanked or congratulated.
Wow, that's such a simple practice.
It's simple, but it's so powerful.
But powerful, yeah.
It just sets that tone of appreciation and gratitude.
Right, it creates a much more...
And it really creates that much more positive and collaborative atmosphere.
Yeah.
And it subtly shifts the focus from individual agendas to those collective goals.
Okay, so are there any other examples?
Yeah, another one that I found really interesting is from Heiligenfeld. A mental health organization in Germany. And they use something called Tingsha bells in their meetings.
Fengsha bells? What are those?
So these are small symbols, that are often used in meditation and mindfulness practices. And at Heiligenfeld, they actually use them to bring attention to the energy in the room.
How does that work?
So at the start of each meeting, someone volunteers to be the bell ringer. And if the discussion starts getting a little heated, people start getting defensive.
Right.
The bell ringer can gently ring the bells just to bring everyone back.
It's like a pause button.
It's like a pause button.
Yeah.
Just to bring everyone back to a more mindful and present state.
It's like a built-in mechanism for de-escalation.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's a really simple but effective way to create that safer space for open and honest communication.
Even when you're dealing with...
Even when you're challenging topics, you're dealing with those challenging topics.
Okay, we've covered a lot of ground here.
We have.
We've talked about the 3 breakthroughs of Teal organizations.
Right.
Self-management, wholeness, and evolutionary purpose. We've explored how these principles are being implemented
in the real world.
In real companies.
In the real world, yeah.
Yeah. From healthcare to manufacturing. To even education. And we've even talked about some really practical
techniques
for bringing these ideas into our meetings.
Into our meetings.
And everyday interactions.
Absolutely.
It's a lot to take in.
It is a lot to take in.
But I think the core message here is that Teal isn't some utopian fantasy.
Utopian fantasy.
This is a real, more viable alternative.
Outdated to those outdated models.
That are no longer serving us.
That are no longer serving us.
And it's not about reaching some kind of perfect end state.
It's not about perfection.
It's about
an ongoing journey.
This ongoing journey of learning, adaptation, evolution.
Absolutely.
And it requires us to really unlearn a lot of what we've come to believe.
About how organizations should work.
Yeah.
It requires us to really trust in people.
Yeah.
In their inherent goodness.
And their ability to make
responsible
decisions.
Responsible decisions, yeah.
And that can be hard.
It can be hard.
To let go of that.
To let go of.
Illusion of control.
That illusion of control, yeah.
But the potential rewards are immense.
The potential rewards are huge.
Yeah, and I think we're talking about more than just boosting profit.
That's about
more than
a more human-centered way of working.
That allows people to really...
Yeah, where people can thrive, contribute their unique gifts, find a deeper sense of meaning and purpose in their work.
We're seeing a real hunger for this.
We are.
Kind of change.
People want to work
a desire
in ways that are aligned with their values.
Yeah, to work in ways that are more aligned with our values.
And where they can bring their whole selves to the table.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Teal offers this really compelling framework.
Yeah, it does.
Okay, so we've talked about some of the key takeaways here, but I want to leave our listeners with something to ponder, something to spark their curiosity.
Yeah.
What's one final thought that you want to leave them with today?
I think if you're feeling inspired by what you've heard today, I encourage you to really dive deeper.
Okay.
Read the full version of Reinventing Organizations. Explore the resources that are available online. Connect with others who are passionate about these ideas. But most importantly, start experimenting.
Experiment. I love that.
Yeah.
It's not about having
all
the answers up front.
Having all the answers. It's about trying things out.
Trying things out.
Learning as you go.
Yeah.
And just seeing what emerges.
Who knows what you might discover.
Exactly.
This has been so eye-opening.
It's been an amazing conversation.
I'm really inspired and energized.
That's great to hear.
To think about how I can apply these Teal principles in my own work and life.
And remember, you're not alone on this journey.
Right.
There's a growing global community of people and organizations who are exploring these ideas.
So connect with them. Share your experience.
Connect with them.
Yeah.
Share your experiences and support each other along the way.
We're all in this together.
We are.
And who knows, maybe these seemingly radical ideas will become the new normal.
Maybe.
And create a world of work.
Yeah.
That's more human.
More human.
More purposeful.
More purposeful.
And ultimately more fulfilling for everyone.
That's a world I want to live in.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Thanks for having me.
Into reinventing organizations.
It's been a pleasure.
We hope you found it.
I hope so.
As insightful and inspiring as we did.
Me too. It's true. Teal is a deep well of knowledge.
We've certainly given you a lot to think about today, haven't we?
We have, but that's the beauty of it, isn't it? There's always more to uncover, more to learn, and more ways to apply these principles to create a better future of work.
Absolutely. So knowing we've only just scratched the surface, what are some key takeaways you want listeners to walk away with today? What's really important for them to grasp about Teal?
Well, I think the most important takeaway is that Teal isn't some unattainable utopia or rigid set of rules. It's a very real and practical approach to organizing. And it's evolving. It's already proving successful for companies in all sorts of industries.
So it's about adapting the principles to your specific context.
Exactly.
And finding what works best for your organization.
It's not about copying what someone else has done.
Right.
It's about understanding the core principles of self-management, wholeness, and evolutionary purpose.
Yeah.
And then finding creative ways to bring those principles to life in a way that feels authentic to your organization.
Yeah. And I think it's important to remember this journey requires a real shift in mindset.
It does.
It's about challenging those deeply ingrained assumptions we have about how organizations should function.
Right. Letting go of that command and control mentality.
Right.
And embracing a more organic, trust-based approach can be daunting at first.
It can.
But the potential rewards are huge.
It does seem like we're talking about more than just boosting profits or efficiency.
Yeah, we are.
It's about creating a more human-centered way of working.
Right.
That allows people to thrive. Contribute their unique gifts.
Absolutely.
And find a deeper sense of meaning and purpose in their work.
That's the heart of it.
Yeah.
And I think this shift toward more purpose-driven, human-centered organizations is really resonating with more and more people, especially in today's world.
We're seeing a real hunger for change.
Definitely.
A desire to work in ways that are more aligned with our values and that allow us to bring our whole selves to the table.
Absolutely.
So Teal offers a really compelling framework for making that happen.
It does.
Okay, so we've talked about the key takeaways, but I always like to leave our listeners with something to ponder, something to spark their curiosity and encourage them to continue exploring. What's one final thought you want to leave them with today?
I think if you're feeling inspired by what you've heard today, I really encourage you to dive deeper. Read the full version of Reinventing Organizations, explore the resources that are available online, and connect with others who are passionate about these ideas.
Okay.
But most importantly, start experimenting.
Experiment. I love that.
Yeah.
It's not about having all the answers up front.
Yeah.
It's about trying things out, learning as you go, and seeing what emerges. Who knows? You might just discover some amazing things along the way.
That's the spirit.
Well, I have to say this deep dive has been incredibly eye-opening.
It has been a great conversation.
I'm feeling inspired and energized.
It's wonderful.
To think about how I can apply these Teal principles in my own work and life.
And remember, you're not alone on this journey. There's a growing global community of people and organizations who are exploring and embracing these ideas.
So connect with them, share your experiences, and support each other along the way.
Exactly.
We're all in this together.
We are.
And who knows? Maybe these seemingly radical ideas will become the new normal and create a world of work that's more human, more purposeful, and ultimately more fulfilling for everyone.
That would be amazing.
I think you might be right about that.
Yeah.
That's a future I'm excited to be a part of. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into reinventing organizations.
Thanks for having me.
We hope you found it as insightful and inspiring as we did. And as always, thanks for listening. See you next time on the Facilitators Deep Dive Podcast, your podcast on your way to facilitation mastery. Until next time.
See you then.